We're going to start the forum now in the hopes that we can get through things rapidly and hopefully get you guys out of here to go celebrate Mother's Day in whatever way you plan on doing that. And thank you for being here. We're going to light the chalice.
Okay. We're going to light the chalice with these words from Jane Malden. For our community gathered here, for the spirit that called us together and drew us to this place, we give thanks this day. For the moments that we have shared with others here, for the times we have reached out across barriers of distance and fear and the unknown, for times when others have reached out to us, and for all the moments we have discovered along our path, we give thanks for this gathering.
And Bill Yarbrough is going to help us with the mission and the covenant.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to read our mission statement first. Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming religious community. We bring to life our UU values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, and transform ourselves and our world. And just some highlights from our Covenant of Right Relations. We, the members of Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church, covenant with one another to act in the following ways in our interactions and in all forms of communication. We speak and write directly, openly, and respectfully with each other. We support and encourage diversity within our congregation. We trust each other's best intentions. We respect healthy boundaries, and we honor community decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Now, Michelle Carroll, Vice President of the Board of Trustees, is going to report on some trends and remind us that it's time to invest in our beloved community.
Thank you. Hi. Going to lean in. I was told we need to be a little louder. Our church has historically run an annual pledge drive to raise 80%, about 80% of our operating budget. And we've been sharing information as part of our Make It So strategic planning process with you, showing, Leslie's been sharing the trends that show patterns of giving are changing and traditional churching is in decline. With what we're seeing as that rise of the nuns, your religious choice is none. UU churches are undergoing huge dynamic changes with steep drops in financial health and aging membership for a net result of fewer people in the pews, fewer numbers. Data is showing shows that growth in predominantly white and predominantly older congregations is less likely for many reasons, and one of them being that fewer of those congregations choose more contemporary worship, like with music, like our house band. Congregational growth is just more likely in the data among white Protestant churches. The UUA, I was looking at a 2012 report and on 5-year growth patterns from the UUA, saying UU congregations, growth is occurring in average weekly attendance, not in membership, but attendance. So yeah, more people. So there is some resonance of the message. UUs are ahead of the curve in attendance growth over mainline Protestant, that includes UU, and evangelical. Congregations that are growing are more likely to be spiritually vital and alive, to have strong, permanent leadership, and to enjoy joyful, innovative, and inspirational worship. And I think that is us. That is MDUUC. We have, in fact, grown dramatically in weekly attendance and in membership over the last 7 years since Leslie's been here. From 350 then to about 485, nearly 500 now. And in our strategic planning, Make It So conversations, what we're hearing most and consistently from members, pre and post 2009 members, in these conversations is we are proud of the work we do, how we care for each other, the community we've created here, and the work we do for justice, social, economic, and racial. We want to be exuberantly multicultural and a safe space for each other, maybe a resource for our wider community, a continued force for justice, and we want to do even better at caring for and connecting with one another in community. For a congregation of over 400 people, that takes more than one minister. And one minister that's paid less than the amount advised by UUA guidelines. It takes more than 1.2 people in office staff, using computer equipment and phones that work consistently, reliably, knowing your minister's email is going to get to the person that made a request. We won the fastest growing top growth congregation award last year, 2015, and we've spurted to nearly 500, with half having joined us in the last 7 years. We've managed to end many of the last years with income in excess of our budget, in the black, and we've recently received several large bequests to the church, one in excess of $300,000 that was added to the endowment fund. On the opposite side of the ledger, we do have a demographically older membership base. Our Reverend Leslie has performed 80 memorials in the time she's been here. Over 80 now. Of those we've lost to death, a number in the last couple of years were half a dozen were 5-digit givers and financial givers to the church. And a record number of people are moving because of the cost of housing. Others are having to tighten their belts. And we've had pledge decreases from many for reasons of financial difficulty or other hardships, and impressive increases too. So change is afoot, and we've been experiencing it. While we've grown our membership and our attendance in the pews, on the streets, at dinners, and in calls to witness, we've not invested in ourselves to support that growth or the work it takes to support the increased activity levels. And now we're at a crossroads, which happens in times of change and growth. It's time to make those delayed investments in ourselves so that the people we have can do their jobs efficiently. So we have professional ministerial staff, and the number, 2 at least, that we should have for the community we are now. Thanks.
First, I would like to commend the Stewardship Committee for its tireless work in this especially busy year, securing over $600,000 for MDUUC, despite a difficult financial year, as Michelle was saying, for many of us, and the overall trends that are clearly not favoring robust financial giving. And we thank all of you who have given till it feels good to support the work of our church. And the angels who have given and then stepped up to create the matching pool. That funding is helping us bridge the gap when it became apparent that there would be a substantial gap between what we need and how much we've gathered. So thank you to everybody in the room and everybody out there for giving what you can financially to MDUUC. Tallying up all the contributions through last week and making some budget cuts, we're still going to be short of funds. You can see on the thermometer out in the Borton Hall, we're at about $630,000, and that's about $72,000 short of our goal of $702,000. We're looking at ways to bridge this gap, brainstorming ideas, and one idea is for Reverend Leslie. She's offered to take a salary cut for the coming financial year. That, coupled with the elimination of the second minister position, it would reconcile the shortfall. But I would strongly suggest that would take us in precisely the opposite direction for our vision for MDUUC. A congregation of our size requires more than one minister. And we're a community who's committed to paying our ministerial staff and our office staff salaries that meet or exceed what the UUA recommends, especially considering the high cost of living in the Bay Area. So instead of that, we're working on creating a financial bridge for the operating budget. The Finance Committee, the treasurer and I met this week to look at options, and the Finance Committee and the full board will be meeting soon to look at ways to bridge the gap. One way will be to use unrestricted cash reserves to fill the gap this year. And that's essentially an investment in ourselves to strengthen the foundation of our church and our church community. The amount we may need to bridge the gap from cash reserves looks to be about $30,000, but that remains to be seen depending on how much we get in pledges and how close to the bone we can cut the operating budget. But we have this money. In past years, we've relied on reserve money to bridge the gap, and we've ended the fiscal year in the black. We know that it's important to have reserves, and we also know that it's important to invest in the growth of our church, to support the ministry and the programs that are drawing so many wonderful new members to our sanctuary. This is a challenge that many congregations would be eager to have and that we should embrace. It makes more sense to use some of what's been given than to hold it all in reserve and have congregants suffer due to lack of pastoral care, personal ministry, or lack of programs and services. Let's invest in ourselves. We believe that while we bridge the gap in reserves, we also need to look at ways in the future years to continue to grow stewardship, to better utilize volunteers, and explore other funding methods, in keeping with the new trends about charitable giving. It's a time of change, and what we know is MDUUC is a congregation that is willing to change and grow. We're so grateful that the gap is less than we feared. And we're also aware that we still have important decisions before us. That's a snapshot of where we are financially and within the larger trends that we're seeing in spiritual communities. I wanted to also briefly mention we have an absentee voting bylaw change that is in the works. We're going to have a special congregational meeting in the fall where that will be before the congregation for approval. It's a complicated process to get the procedures in place, and we're fine-tuning those so that we can bring it before the congregation in the fall. That is the extent of our comments. If we have any questions, we'd be happy to address them.
Do you want to run mics?
Yep.
Yeah, we
Carol
have
has
a
a
mic if there are any questions. Ursula.
I'm Ursula Bartels. I don't know if I probably looked at that.
You do, because people can't hear you, Ursula.
Yeah.
Used to that. Hello, Ursula Bartels. Wow, that is cool. I don't have a question, Leslie. I just want to say a couple things. First of all, thank you and the rest of the members of the board for sticking to the budget that you know, after a lot of study, is the right budget. And I know is as cut to the bone as you could possibly get without killing the whole body, the whole organization. And you and I have had discussions about this. I think that we are in, you said a crossroads. I think we are at a crossroads. Let's say it that way. But it's a crossroads where either we go ahead and continue to be the organization that we want to be, or we're going to die, you know? I mean, it's like a shark. You got to keep swimming. And I, for one, would be not happy to have something cut like the value of our ministerial services. I sit on the Personnel Committee. I've looked at the shocking statistics that there are about the pay to other, both the ministry and the staff, the incredibly critical staff who's doing like 1.5 to 3 jobs apiece.
Right.
And so I think that not only is it a critical first step to utilize other bridging funding mechanisms, as you suggested, for this year, but to really find a way to brainstorm for what is our new paradigm for getting money in the future. If pledging is predicted to continue in this way and something isn't going to change, we've got to find a new way to go about doing this if we're going to keep what we have and grow it further.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. This is a bridge year, and it's an opportunity for us to develop a new paradigm to.
Can I share one thing on that,
Yeah,
Leslie?
please.
Thank you. I guess I need to be on because we're filming. So I just want to say, I want to thank you, Ursula, but I also want to thank Michelle and Leslie, who put this together with very little notice, and really appreciate all their hard work behind the scenes. I want to mention a couple things that I have said to the board, but I realized I haven't said to the congregation, and one of them is that I've had the opportunity to look behind the numbers in our UU association recently, because I sit on a task force that's looking at funding for the association. And in that work, I've discovered that we have 80 congregations that have disappeared off the books completely since I last looked at those numbers. We have another somewhere between 125 and 200 that are, I would consider, so incredibly small as not to be viable, some of which have, 7 members on the books, 1, 2 members on the books, but they're still there officially listed as congregations. So, we talk about this, we've been talking about this trend for a while, and I think we're now starting to see it. And the other aspect I want to say is that I also do follow-up with members that don't pledge each year, and, kind of touch base and talk to people. I get the calls from people who are exiting. Most people still are not exiting because they're dissatisfied, but the few who are will say, for the first time since I have been here, I'm a pretty high-touch minister. That's really important to me, but there's a limit to what you can do in a congregation of this size. And for the first time, we are hearing from people saying, you, the ministry, did not know who I was or what I needed, and that's why I'm leaving. And we've never heard that before, but for the last 18 months, we've started to hear that. And to me, that's a warning sign that says, we can't just wait. So.
Art.
Oh, good, thank you. I'd like to do 2 things. One is make a little historical perspective, having been around for God forever. Things come and things go, and some budgets are short and some are not. This one is really, in the perspective, very, very small. I know it looks big from your perspective, and it is significant, but it's relatively small. It's not 25%. It's 5 or at most 10. So I would strongly support your approach. But we don't do everything we could, and I don't mean this as a criticism. We have people who would like to give us some money, and they can't.
Yeah.
It's I know we've talked about it, but other people haven't heard that discussion,
No, it's great.
Leslie.
It's great.
We could take gifts on Sunday morning by credit card. We could have a QR code on our order of service with little interruption, and be able to take those gifts when people wish to give them to us. It's not hard, it's not expensive, and it's free money that we're not now getting. We've spent a lot of energy on credit cards for pledges, which costs us money, and not taken the opportunity to receive funds that people want to give us, which are not pledges and which we will not see otherwise.
Good. Thank you for that. Good point, and that's the kind of thing that we need to brainstorm and implement. Any further comments? Or I would really sincerely thank you, stalwarts, for coming to this forum on Mother's Day. We're going to have, our next forum will be on the 24th. Yes, past President Bob Olson.
Hold on for the mic.
That won't work. Of May.
Yeah, I'm Bob Olson, and I'm reminded of the great philosopher's comment, Yogi Berra, this is deja vu all over again.
Yes.
Listening to the report that our president shared with us, if you take the Angels' contributions this year, and I'm rounding, of roughly 30,000, and the proposal to use 30,000 from the unrestricted cash reserve, which I think is prudent under the circumstances, that's 60,000, which is 10% of the budget that would have to be made up next year just to have a status quo, stay where you are. I certainly, during my tenure on the board, we weren't successful at coming up with the brainstorming to lead to the new innovative, but more importantly, successful techniques of getting more money out of our congregation to support what they receive from the church. And the effort in the coming year to do that really has to be focused because the efforts to plan for the future, unless supported by the money, will unfortunately not flower. So I really urge the board to devote lots of time in the coming 12 months to figure out new techniques of getting people to value with their checkbook what they receive from this church.
Agreed. Ann?
I'm Ann Piper, and I'm wondering, does more money come in than is pledged? And if so, what happens to it?
Pledges are, I believe, about 70% of the money, the income that the church receives. So the operating budget is not 100% pledge-driven. And to Bob's point, more and more, we're going to need to look to other sources for our to balance our operating budget.
But does more money come in than is pledged?
Oh,
So as someone who sat on the finance committee of this church for a number of years until this year, when I didn't need to because we have a great administrator who sits there now, I will say this, and so yeah, we have had the experience where more pledges have come in than are pledged. And we have also had the experience where more general contributions that aren't pledges have come in. And as Bob knows, Olson, because he was president during a number of these years, we've also had so what happens to that money is it goes into the reserve fund that Leslie's talking about, that the board is recommending taking filling this gap. And it has also been the case that we have proposed deficit budgets 3 other times in the past 5 years, and we have never had a deficit budget. We have actually had a slight surplus in every year. So part of it is the forecasting. It's we're fighting some cultural things, including the fact that with many people think of our pledging like they do with KQED, and KQED now has a thing where if you don't change your pledge, they assume it's a continuing pledge. So people assume that it's a continuing pledge, and we found last year Marie was very diligent when she started seeing the same check coming in every month, going to someone and saying, "Are you actually still paying on your pledge?" And they would say yes, but they had never given us a pledge card that allowed us to say it was a continuing pledge. So we're trying, it's a cultural shift that we're trying to catch up with, but that's what happens when more money comes in, it goes into the general reserve.
With that, I think, Leslie, do you have closing words for us? We'll extinguish our chalice.
My mic is dead, so I'll just say this. Bless you all, the ones that stayed. Bless each other on the way out. Thank you.